Hi everyone. Nedbank was an early adopter of the Azure cloud. However, what convinced them to move their business critical SaaS environment into Azure, and that too to be one of the first in the world to actually do that? I chatted with Paul Morley, IT exec from Nedbank, along with Laura Kotlinski from SaaS, and I played a bit of devil's advocate. I asked him some difficult questions and he responded with some bloody good answers. Let's have a look.
We always had an outlook that we were going into a very, very difficult time, given the economy and where we were heading. And all indications were long before COVID that we were going to go into a downturn. And
touched on something actually very, very important. You're saying that data needs to lead the transactional side in maturity.
Well, it is 100%. Can I tell you why? And I'm 100% behind that. Because if you talk cloud, and this is where my little bugbear starts, Tab. This is where my bugbear starts. When you talk cloud, what is cloud? Essentially, cloud is data. It's not application and it's not infrastructure. Every conversation, they start with the infrastructure conversation, then they start with this IIS and PARS and SARS, and now they've got DAS, which is data as a service. Really? Data as a service? You've got to be kidding me.
Hey guys, and welcome to this nice casual chat. We're recording this on a Friday evening. It's a casual chat between Microsoft, Nedbank, and SaaS. And I've got two very special guests with me here tonight. The first is IT exec from Nedbank, Mr. Paul Morley. Paul, a warm welcome to you.
It's fine, you can call me Paulie Tab. I'm going to call you Tab anyway, so you might as well call me Paulie. Yes, it's great, and I think, it's a Friday evening. It's about 8:30ish, around about there. It's great to sit here and talk to you guys after a long week. Give you some background. I'm the executive for the enterprise data operations at Nedbank, the foundation for a lot of the analytics platforms, a lot of the infrastructure platforms that we use, and basically provide the service to the bank, including regulatory reporting, to the bank from a data perspective. So I look after a large chunk of the data ecosphere at Nedbank, coming across all of our subsidiaries.
Right. Now the other guest that we have is the account exec for Nedbank from SaaS, and that's Laura Kotlinski. Laura, a warm welcome and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Tavash, for having me, and hi, Paul. I always enjoy chatting to the three of you guys. I'm looking forward to our casual chat tonight.
Awesome. So I want to start there, Laura, before we dive into what Nedbank have been doing. Recently, there's been a lot in the press about this new partnership between Microsoft and Nedbank to bring analytics into the Azure cloud. Now, don't you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's been super exciting. So SaaS and Microsoft have formed an extensive technology and go-to-market strategic partnership. We're one of a few strategic partnerships for Microsoft. So what does that essentially mean? It means that Microsoft Azure will become the preferred cloud provider for SaaS cloud. SaaS and Microsoft will build integrations across Microsoft's entire cloud portfolio, including Azure, Dynamics 365, Microsoft 365, and Power Platform. And then the SaaS solutions will be listed on the Azure marketplace. So it's really exciting. SaaS has been recognized as an expert and leader in analytics, data science, machine learning, and being that strategic partner for Microsoft, it means that together we can help our mutual customers, such as Nedbank, address some of their most critical and complex analytical challenges. Right.
Now, while all of that is exciting, I have to ask Paul a question, which is your SaaS analytics environment is basically critical to the bank's functioning. And what made you take the risk of moving that not just into the cloud, but into Azure?
I think it's a great question. Yes, it is critical to the bank, our SaaS backbone. It deals with a lot of the dimensions of regulatory reporting and operational risk, etc., and a lot of the analytics for various other businesses or divisions within the various clusters. So why did we go to the cloud? Okay, so Nedbank has adopted the three core strategic digital disruptive strategies over the last 2 or 3 years, and that being data, digital, and cloud. Three of the most disruptive strategies that you can employ within an organization. And for us, and coming in long before COVID-19 started, let's talk about a year or two before that. And we always had an outlook that we were going into a very, very difficult time, given the economy and where we're heading. And all indications were long before COVID that we were going to go into a downturn. And all those years back, we decided we're going to do this. And again, you need to modernize it because there are a number of major banks in play in South Africa, and there's the top 5 plus there's a whole bundle of new banks. There's Time Bank, there's Discovery, there's a whole whack of these smaller banks, all digitally born banks coming into the market, and that can pose a challenge for the bigger traditional banks. And if you want to be relevant going into this new digital age, this new age of disruption, the fourth industrial age, you do need to consider the strategies that age brings to the forefront. Which and again, it's all about information. It's about AI. It's about digital. It's about hyper communications, hyperscale. It's about the connectivity around the world, and that does shape a lot of the market that we play in, and for that matter, will shape the markets of retail, and a lot of the other markets are going to be affected by it. And to be honest, technically, a bank is a digital organization. I mean, all of its business is digital. Let's put it that way. It doesn't produce anything physical. Now, when we decided, and by the way, the cloud strategy is the last of the 3 strategies that Nedbank employed. So the first one was digital, get to the front line as quickly as possible, and that has been very successful, as you know, with the products that have been launched, like money apps and all of those other good things. Rated as the best, most innovative products in the country for 2020. And then obviously there was the data strategy, which we sort of employed maybe a year or 2 after the digital strategy, and we've been running now on the program for about 3.5 years. And now recently in the last 2 years, we're starting to get some momentum on the cloud. Now, both those the first 2 strategies puts a lot of pressure on the cloud, and the Nedbank's got some very, very, very tough targets. And in the next 2 years, we've got to move 80% of our workload into the cloud. That's some very aggressive targets, considering the complexity of the legacy that you've got behind you. So why did SaaS, getting to your question quickly, why did I decide to move to the cloud? Well, a few things. Moving to the cloud, knowing that this is coming. The 80-20, move 80% of the workload coming into Nedbank, we know it's coming. And then, it just so happened, sort of the beginning of last year, the new versions of SaaS came out, and we're going to renew this, and we needed to start monetizing because there was a new version, the VIA version of SaaS that came out. And that came up, and if we're going to deploy it, and then I asked myself, well, if I had to upgrade the backbone to the new VIA framework, and we've got an 80-20 target for cloud transactional over the next 2 years, why do it twice? Why just like right. Let's do all at once. That was the first point. The second point was to get ahead of the curve. Now, when you go to 80-20, that's a lot of people wanting to go scrambling for the cloud. So if you're first in the queue, I didn't want to be at the back of the queue. I didn't want to be behind the payments engines. I didn't want to be behind the cluster-facing engines. I wanted to be the first app because that can bottle up very quickly because there's only a limited amount of resources. So
Paul, let me ask you. I think you've touched on something actually very, very important. You're saying that data needs to lead the transactional side in maturity.
Well, it is 100%. Can I tell you why? And I'm 100% behind that. Because if you talk cloud, and this is where my little bugbear starts, Tab. This is where my bugbear starts. When you talk cloud, what is cloud? Essentially, cloud is data. It's not application and it's not infrastructure. Right. So when we talk about building clouds and we're building, the reason why most organizations fail at the cloud conversation, there's around about 54% of the cloud initiatives around the world fail at medium to large enterprise. I'm not talking about the SME type stuff. The reason why those things fail is because every conversation I hear, and they do it as well, every conversation, they start with the infrastructure conversation, then they start with this IIS and PARS and SARS, and now they've got DAS, which is data as a service. Really? Data as a service? You're going to be kidding me. So they start with all that thing, but the data is the thing. The data is the thing that trips everybody up. The data, the hidden costs in cloud are all about data.
Yeah.
Movement of data, the ingress, the operational costs, the storage costs, all those things that kill massive programs all have a common thread, and that is data. And they don't talk data. That's why they fail. So it must be.
And I think this is indicative of why Nedbank has been one of the more successful customers. Certainly, we've seen it. This approach that you've mentioned. Now, tell us a bit about some of the technical highlights very briefly, right? You're calling this your Data Apollo program. Now, that's an ambitious name. You're talking about the opportunity for near unlimited compute in the cloud. So give us a bit of on the technical highlights that you see in taking this just giant leap or giant step.
So that's a great question. So besides the two reasons I've given you why we made the decision to jump into the cloud first, being we wanted to be first, not because of any other thing, but we didn't want to get bottleneck behind us, and we had to upgrade, so it was good. Now, what does that bring? The other reason why we want to go to the cloud, because the cloud allows us to leverage capability that we did not have on-prem or available on-prem, or we did not have, period. So it allowed us a new dimension to these products. One of the things it does for us, now we talk about the VIA grid framework, the whole distributed grid compute, that allows us to virtually move compute around very, very quickly, which is excellent when you're dealing with analytics, and especially with machine learning and AI. When you're running models and training models, you want to be flexible in your compute power. You want to be able to move that compute around to do certain things, to certain workloads, as and when. Because when you're training models, they take days or weeks or months to train. Every time you go through an epoch, with a big data set, it can take you a week to train one epoch, and you might have to run 10 epochs. I mean, that's 10 weeks. You might not be relevant. That use case might not be relevant anymore in 10 weeks because it might be a full use case. So it can cost you money. The longer you take to train AI, and if you've got a fraud analytics model, for example, and you're training it and it takes you 10 weeks, that's a lot of money that you could potentially lose in 10 weeks. So, flexibility of compute is very, very important and you can't do that in a traditional sense because you need what cloud brings it. The second big reason why sorry, Tab, you want to go?
No.
So the second big reason, the second big thing is it allows us to bring AI and machine learning close to the edge. So if you look at our digital marketplaces, if you look at money, where is all of that? That is all now plugging into the back end or the front end of cloud. So it gives us the capability of allowing capabilities very close to the edge if we wanted to. It also allows our risk fraternity, from the ops risk to the model, it allows our risk fraternity to start managing risk in a real-time scenario as close to the edge as possible. Now that's a big win for the bank because typically risk management, organizational enterprise risk management happens at the back end of the organization. And generally it takes hours or days for that to flow through the risk system or ecosphere. So this is another capability it brings. It allows us to manage risk at the front end, which is a massive benefit for us.
So let me recap there. Let me recap there, Paul, for the viewers, right? So I think you've touched on some critical points: managing risk, bringing compute to the edge, but really you want the scale of cloud to answer your questions now. You don't want to wait for a week when it might be irrelevant, right? But then, Paul, I'm going to ask you a straighter question as you'll ever get. We can talk about business benefits, models, cost benefits, and we can talk about all the great technical stuff. In the end, though, how does this help Nedbank's end customer, the man in the street?
How does it help him? Well, it helps that person in a number of ways. It allows us to understand him better. It allows us to protect him better. Because again, remember, when you're dealing in this age, and here is a big challenge a lot of people know. On average, everybody today on Earth has 1,400, on average, 1,400 digital interactions. That means there's 1,400 interactions in this worldwide web, this ecosphere between cell phones, all this digital stuff. By 2025, that'll be up to 25. By 2025, that'll be up to 5,500. So that's triple the digital interaction each person has in the case. So the data is growing at a huge thing, at a huge velocity. So there's two things that's going to kill us in the future when it comes to data. There's two things, and both things directly impact the customer. That is the volume of data that's going to become a problem. So how do you, when data is growing at an exponential rate, how are you going to govern it? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to deploy ethical rules around it? When it's growing faster than you can actually put the rules down, then the other thing you need to worry about is the velocity of this data. This data in this hyper-converged fourth industrial age is moving across the planet in real time. So it's real-time exponential growth of data. You are going to battle to manage that data. So how does it help the customer? Well, it very much helps the customer. When the customer wants to interact with the products, he wants to be protected because it's new digital age. So you need a lot of that stuff to manage the customer. Now, the customer service availability. So when a customer, why does it happen to your customer? When you start making real-time decisioning around credit, real-time decisioning around applications of forms, that's what the cloud brings. So it brings a level of service to the customer where you can deploy your products far quicker because you've got a lot of this edge intelligence. We call it edge intelligence, if you will. You've got a lot of your back-end stuff that you've now moved to the front, like your risk management. Like I was saying, the risk management system sits at the back of the organization. When you start bringing those risk components forward, close to the edge, those risk-based decisions around products, how to sell, how to protect your data, you want a home loan, how do I approve it? When you start bringing those risk-based decision engines to the edge, the ability for a customer to interact with the bank and get new product approval, get new loans, close down loans is a massive advantage.
So I guess we're saying, Paul, that ultimately all this, all the investment Nedbank is making, the element of risk that you're taking in being a leader in moving to cloud, ultimately your customer, the man in the street, should see the benefit by increased service levels, cutting edge products, all of that, right? But now I want to switch to Laura. Laura, SaaS as an organization, a tech company, what does moving to the cloud, your portfolio of products, what does it mean to you?
Oh, so it's super exciting. So for us, it's enabling a whole lot of new capabilities. It's providing new reach that we previously didn't have. I mean, if you think about what this partnership means and why we went ahead with it, essentially the partnership focuses on three parallel tracks. The first one is moving existing installs, and essentially this is essentially the journey that we've embarked with Nedbank, right? And Nedbank was one of the first globally to make this move from on-premise to the cloud, to take advantage of the scale, the agility, the efficiencies, cost optimizations, right? Essentially, the first track is lift and shift, or rehosting SaaS deployment in Azure, or moving SaaS solutions to Azure. So, I mean, what it's meant for Nedbank, for example, is with some of the solutions, quicker time to get access to new features, new capabilities, real-time capabilities, being able to, going forward, spin up some of these services. We talk about things like, Paul touched on it, operationalizing analytics at the bank. We're currently embarking on such projects, and this is new for us, right? This is phenomenal for Nedbank. Nedbank is again one of the first few banks really looking at doing model ops, right, and listing these things in the Azure marketplace, so making it more accessible and quickly accessible to our customers. That second parallel track is really Microsoft focused, where we're going to be looking at, it's a foundational integration, looking at integrating between the two partners. Microsoft will be looking at integrating SaaS capabilities into the Azure components, standalone SaaS analytics to augment Azure components. New commercialization options will be available. I mean, our customers are wanting to they want to consume services, right? I mean, that's the expectations. They only want to pay for what they're using. And I think the third parallel track is really jointly focused by both SaaS and Microsoft is around new capabilities, that collaboration. So focusing on the new stuff, building on foundational integration to generate new ideas, and SaaS and Microsoft co-engineering tools and solutions. So
that gives
really
you
exciting.
Flexibility as well as a vendor and solution provider. Okay. Now I want to jump back to Paul, because here's an interesting one for you, Paul. Now, out there in the industry, they're going to be looking at Nedbank and I guess your team as first movers, leaders in moving to the cloud. The question, though, is how does one balance cost and risk with all these potential benefits?
Well, the first thing, I mean, a lot of people make the first mistake, and they often say the cloud is cheaper than on-prem but it's not, to be honest. It's not necessarily cheaper. So you've got to, and it might be cheaper, but the cost differential, the difference in that is very marginal. Actually, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being very, very marginal. So you need to base your view on and your business case on the capabilities that you never had before. What's the value of the capabilities you don't have? So don't focus when you go to cloud. My advice to anyone that's a sort of medium to large enterprise, yes, you can put all those other the normal traditional stuff in the cloud, but if you're going to position a big cloud move, you've got to look at the opportunities that these new capabilities bring you, because that's what's going to bring you the big money. The big money doesn't lie in hard drives, cheap hard drives, all of that other stuff. And I'm not saying that's not valid. Of course it's valid, but you've got to strengthen your view to the cloud by really stretching your imagination and putting yourself in the front, because if you put yourself in the front, that is where the value lies. The value doesn't lie in coming second, third, or fourth, or for that matter, 100th. The value is not there because you've got 99 people ahead of you, all absorbing the profit or potential in the marketplace. So anybody behind number one is losing value or doesn't have the full maximum value. So for me, the risk is, yes, it's high risk, but it's again high reward, because if you can get it right early, and you can bring these capabilities to an organization, you start delivering services that your counterparts or your competitors cannot. I mean, one of the big things we are heading to, a few years ago, there's a bank in Canada that managed to do Basel reporting in real time. No, not daily, not monthly. To get to a position like that, you really got to look at the world fundamentally different. You can't accept what we've been doing up to now as the normal. So you've really got to take a bold step. You can't grow into this world. You all in or you all out. So it's an all-in game. You can't be tentative. Because then you're just going to die. You've got to be committed. And I think that is why we were so successful. I'm not talking about the sort of the bigger global sort of cloud thing, but our SASE blue. Why we were successful. There's a couple of reasons why we were successful. One is we went all in. So there's no opportunity to back out. If we're going, we're going. And it doesn't matter if something breaks. It doesn't matter if Postgres doesn't work. It doesn't matter if we can't install the SaaS app. We're going.
So you need commitment. You need to have commitment.
Yes. But more importantly, you need to have the commitment from your internal team. And I'm not talking about the commitment from the users. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the commitment from the engineering team, because those are the guys that are going to burn the lights. Those are the guys that are going to carry you to success in things like this. So if they're looking at you and they're going, yeah, I don't know about this. You probably won't have a sharper sword as you should have. But when you make that commitment, if we're going to run hard, and we're going to run together, and we're going to run forward. We're not going to stop. Nothing's going to stop us. And that was the mental reset a lot of my team had. It reset it, because it didn't matter about your skills, because everybody's adopting this new project without the skills. They weren't cloud certified. They didn't know DevOps. They didn't know. There was no architectures for this. There was no patterns for this. There was no security architecture for this. There was nothing. So there was no one in Nedbank that we could use as a reference. So it's all new. From the way you work, the technology is absolutely new. Fundamentally, the architecture is radically different. New tech, everything was changed, even down to how they hit the keyboards. Yeah. Everything was different. So there was 100. So everybody's now equal. It doesn't matter if you're a 50-year-old technical guru or a 21-year-old graduate. It doesn't matter. Everybody now starts the race at an even path. There wasn't any ego playing. There was no ego play, like I know better, you don't know. So everybody starts the race equally.
So can we say, Paul,
what helped us? That is what helped us.
That can we say that those adopting a wait and see approach today, even in 2021, are they putting their business at risk, in a sense?
Yeah, we're all putting our business at risk. Even the guys that are first runners or first deployers, even those guys are putting the risk of business. Likewise, the guys that do not do that, and they sit at the back, are putting their risk in business. So it doesn't actually matter. People talk about, Paul, it's risky, you can't do this. I'm like, guys, the risk is irrelevant. You're going to be risky if you go first, and you're going to put your business at risk if you're going to go last. That's the bottom line. The risk is this environment we live in has an inherent risk. You're either going to do it or you're not, and you can't base your decision on a risk, because the risk for both parties is almost equal. You can go out of business if you don't. You can go out of business if you do. They're both there. And cloud failure rates is 50-50. So technically, it's an irrelevant conversation, because 50-50, it's so what? So it's an irrelevant conversation. Risk is irrelevant when you do this.
So
you
rather
have to do it.
So you have to do it, number one. And number two, rather focus on the innovation. All these, as you said earlier, the new things that you could not do in the old world. And taking your business, in this case a bank, really forward and getting ahead of the competition. So that's very interesting. That's a great answer, Paul, by the way, for a Friday evening, I must say. All of these are great answers.
And I haven't had my whiskey yet.
So Laura, I want to jump to you now. Assess as a vendor and as a technology provider made this jump to cloud. It's added value around the world, and it's really added value to Nedbank, those who took the risk to move. What's next to come from SaaS?
So I think I touched on some of that already earlier on when I spoke about those three parallel tracks. So for us, it's about getting that foundational, the integration right, and then the new capabilities and the collaboration. So, you say what's next. So, Paul, we've gone through this journey, we've modernized, we've migrated you to the cloud. So I can throw the question back to you guys. I'm hoping Monday morning, Paul, Tavash, and myself, we can sit around the boardroom and talk about how do we embed analytics across the Microsoft product portfolio within Nedbank, right? How do we start unlocking value with the power of what analytics can do for Nedbank, right? And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Okay.
And Paul, what's next for the Apollo program, if I could call it that?
Can you push it ahead? I'm always a little bit of a maverick, so they like to call me a bit of a maverick in Nedbank. So, I look for those high value, and I suppose it's risky. I wouldn't lie. It's the pushing edge. Do something new. Do something creative. We don't have to live in the status quo. And my biggest bugbear about a lot of organizations is they get stuck in the status quo. They're happy to go to work every day and do the same thing, every day to have the same meeting. I'm not that sort of leader. No, that's just wasting everybody's time. You've got to have a purpose. Your purpose is not to be the status quo. Think about it. You're going to work just to do the same thing you did yesterday? No one. So why do we, as an organization, a collective as an organization, adopt that attitude? Because up until 4 or 5 years ago, it was like status quo. We'll just knock on forward year by year. And the example is, let's talk about COVID. We all talked about working from home and digital working from home and remote working for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. We've all been talking about it. We all had a strategy. But I don't know if we should. COVID hits us, everybody's working from home. I'm like, guys, so why didn't you do that 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Because you benefit in that. You save on property costs. You save on the traffic. You save on many dimensions. That working from home has a fundamental impact in terms of saving costs for organizations and for individuals. So why didn't we do it 5 years ago? Why did we have to wait for COVID? And that is my example around the status quo. It's ridiculous. We knew about it 5 years ago. Why did we do it? We're here today. So for me, what's going forward? Bedding AI and analytics into the backbone of the enterprise. And I'm not talking about use cases. Now, I'm not talking about we need a use case here, a use case there, because those are very surgical pieces of work. They're very focused, a use case for that. I'm beyond that. I'm saying AI should inherently be built in as a foundation into the lowest building blocks of the enterprise. Think of storage. Storage is your lowest building block and foundation of a technology enterprise. Okay, because you store stuff. It's there all over. There's no use case for storage. You understand? So the analogy I use, it's like me saying, I want a use case for an isolon or 20 gig. Why do you need a use case? You put the storage in. I want the same approach for IR. It must be at the lowest fundamental level of the enterprise. That's where the real value lies. Use cases, once off or doing it ad hoc is great. It saves you a lot of money, but it's not sustainable because there's only so many use cases you can do. There's, whatever the number of use cases there are, you'll eventually run out of use cases. It doesn't matter what the number is. So you've got to look more strategically when you deploy AI and deep analytics into an organization. And you've got to embed it like you embed storage, like it's a network. It must become a commodity. It must become AI must be a consumable, if I put it that way. It must be at the bottom layer of the enterprise. It shouldn't be doing, yes, there is value for that. I get that. There's value for that. But if you want real value, it lies at the fundamentals, at the bottom of the enterprise.
Yeah.
And integrates everything together and learns together and makes us organism we call organizations alive and adaptable and reactive. But it has got to happen at the lowest level. And for me, that's what I want to drive. I mean, that's where the real value for AI lies. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute use cases, they do, but that's not sustainable.
Yeah. That's great, Paul. That's really exciting to hear. I'll just add something to that. What next for Microsoft? Well, we will continue rolling out features into our cloud regions, more regions across the world, more features in regions like South Africa to enable our partners like SaaS to roll out their latest technology. And of course, our leading customers like Nedbank, who have really been ahead on the cloud journey to go and innovate. But I'll also add, Paul, I think all three of us can agree. We do it for the people, right? Your customers, as I said earlier, the man in the street, from our perspective, our customers, which is you, our partners. It's about making life better at the end of the day. And it's exciting as well. As you said, I really like what you said, is that nobody really wants to go to work every day and do the same thing. That really resonated with me coming out of this call. So it is late on a Friday. Any closing thoughts before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, one thing. I like what you said around, we're doing good for our customers. But analytics, to be honest, as leaders, senior leaders of an organization, we have an obligation to make our organization sustainable and resilient. Because the organization employs all these people. We have an obligation to make sure that these people stay employed and we have a healthy, resilient organization and not contribute to the issues in that we find ourselves in South Africa, in a lot of places. So we have an obligation as leaders. So it's not just about delivering service to our end users or our customers. It is also about our leadership obligation to our staff to make sure that they're in a healthy place, to make sure that they're in a stable environment and they've got something to look forward to in work, because they've also got families. And it's our obligation to make an organization sustainable and resilient. So it's not just about the customer.
Very profound, Paul. Very, very, good thought that you shared with us. Laura, from your side.
Agreed. And as partners, we're here to support you, and we're stronger together, right? What we can do together as partners is it's powerful. So agreed.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, we're gonna wrap there. It is late on a Friday, and thank you for joining in on our Friday evening chat with Paul Morley, IT exec from Nedbank, and Laura Kotlinski, the account exec for Nedbank from SaaS. I think we could have gone on for another hour, so perhaps we'll do another one. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you again really soon. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.